Trust
Hey, yeah, we can hear you. All good.
Okay, that's brilliant. So I just want to present my screen quickly so that everybody can see. Okay. Hopefully we all good to go. All right. So I'm going to give a brief presentation to start off with, talking about how I'm applying PropTech in the global market. I'm based in the UK, but I've got clients all around the world. And I just want to share with you how we're doing it from a global perspective. I will then move on to the panel discussion where we'll talk a bit more sort of about the African market, where I have my panelists with me, and then we'll have 15 minutes at the end for a bit of Q&A. All right, so what's kind of driving the sort of the global PropTech side? It actually really has to do with a lot of our clients wanting to have better data and information which they can use during the operational phase. That's one of the primary drivers. But then when we're actually going about building the asset and designing the asset, we're also thinking about how we're using data and technologies to be able to do that more efficiently. I think one thing I want to be sort of very clear about, clients are on two journeys. They are either on digitization or digitalization. And my best way of sort of describing the two is digitization is where you've got something like a record and you make it into a CD. But what some clients are wanting to do is to completely transform their business, and hence digitalization, and that's creating something like, say, Spotify. So it's actually helping them to transform their business, and they're looking at their assets to be able to do that. Now, just for clarity, I'm not going to be talking about the operational state or how the asset is managed. This is clearly about how to build the asset. So this is looking at planning, designing, and the delivery. Okay, so why is this need for change? Sort of quite a bit of a doom and gloom graphic there, really, so to speak. It's simpler. Basically, if people do not change and start to embrace PropTech, they're going to simply come off the edge. And we need to look at the market as to sort of what sort of things are driving this change. Productivity, the construction industry is notoriously unproductive. If I think about the amount of time that gets wasted, it is significant. And when you look at sectors like manufacturing, sitting at 3.6%, and construction globally is like 1%, there's a lot of room for improvement. If we look at the modern methods of construction, that's another sort of big driver. We heard in the previous presentation from a US perspective, but the US market is circa $30 billion worth of spend. What will be the estimated sort of return from that investment that they're going to be putting in, and also again from American US perspective, that's that $9 billion worth of saving just through better use of data, and that's during the design phase, the build phase, and obviously in the construct phase. We're also living in a world of connected devices. Everybody has probably 4 or 5 devices on them, busy recording steps, what we're doing. It might be time, it might be where we are, GPS, etc., and so forth. But in the construction sector, there is a growing demand for these connected devices. And the prediction at the moment from a Gartner report was there will be 50 billion devices available to us by 2030. And when we sort of look at the use, what sort of happens in there, we know that there can be productivity gains within, certainly from a project management perspective. 70% of data that is generated either relates to assets being in terms of asset operation, or as I'll show you some examples of where it is used on site and to help with automation and so on. And finally, there is this growing need, whether it's, the zero carbon or net zero agenda, whether it's, the Paris Treaty and so on. But people who own assets need to start upgrading them. They need to start thinking about the sustainability. They need to start thinking of the environment. And at the moment, there's less than 1% of all new buildings even achieve a net zero standard. But there's a big sum of figure, big figure that's needed to sort of get to that stage. So, in my opinion, standing still is no option, especially if we want to move forward and we want to sort of start embracing this, either whether it's digitization or digitalization. We need to start embracing these technologies that are available to us. And the last bit, the amount of construction waste that is going to just from every single job that we work on is significant, and we really need to start addressing that and not be so dependent upon manufacturing all the time for getting new materials in play. So there's big market drivers for this need for PropTech. So what are the sort of the disruptors? And I've just got a couple up there, but the key thing is that if anybody is in a competitive market, you are certainly going to be looking for some sort of commercial advantage. And I know there's always a discussion about, oh, it's going to cost more and so on. It absolutely does in the beginning. I'm not going to lie about that, but I can tell you the efficiencies are significant, having now done this for circa 7 years. And there is the productivity gains which you get from that. You'll clearly use less waste, and something that we certainly challenged across Europe is the lack of skills. So modular construction, the ability to be able to get things created and built somewhere, brought in, and using people that don't necessarily have specific skills is absolutely key. So I'm absolutely confident, one way or another, you have all heard about drones, robots, augmented reality, RFID, and so on. So it's about how do we start bringing these together really for our advantage. And I thought I'd use the example of Airbus. Airbus go out and they go and design a plane. They test absolutely everything. Before they get each of the individual components, they've engaged with the supply chain. They bring it all in from different parts of the world, and they put together an aircraft that has been tested, that they know they know absolutely as much as they possibly can do about that aircraft. So why are we not applying that to the building industry? Why are we not going out and absolutely designing this building and using these technologies to be able to work out how the building is going to operate, what's the most efficient way that we can build it, what's the sequencing, how might we be able to use, improve the logistics that go around that, and so on. So, there are other industries that we can learn from, but, having done, quite a few of these jobs now where we can use modern methods of construction, or modular design, bringing these units to quickly build things, or rapid construction is absolutely key. We only have to look at that COVID hospital that was built in China. They did say, I think it was circa 2 weeks that they took to build it. The reason why they could build it so quickly is because they'd already thought about everything that needed to be there. And then finally, I just thought I'd just how have we been applying, sort of technologies during the construction stage? It doesn't need to be, these are off-the-shelf products. These are products which every single day, we could just go and buy something like, we can go and get Tableau or Power BI as an example. We can have better reporting. We can use HoloBuilder if we want to take 360 scans of site. So we know that the construction, we can monitor the progress that's taking place on site. This is just a very, very simple example of some tools that I used with one of my clients. And one of the key things was that we were able to bring them to market 12 months earlier. And that was absolutely, for when you're in the real estate space, and in this particular instance, it was a property developer, getting to market 12 months sooner made a big difference in their return on investment. So there was a drive sitting within that to from us as a project management team, as a design team, to start embracing these technologies, and also from the contractors on site to start bringing these on board. We often think about payments. Payments are very much, we don't want to erode our margin. But in this particular instance, we got agreement from the client to be able to say we are going to preserve those margins from the teams, and we're able to compress that sort of design phase and embrace that modular construction bit to actually build this particular building fairly rapidly. All right, so that, as I say, was an incredibly quick flyover. I'm going to now go into the panel discussion, and hopefully my panelists are on board. Yeah. Okay, I can hear some voices. Are we there?
Hi, Kim, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Good.
Right, have we got the other panelists available? Okay, shall I kick off?
Oh, sure.
All right, I just concerned that. Yeah. All right. I think so. Lisa, and I'm going to ask you the first sort of question to sort of get this going. Given as I was saying, that a lot of these technologies are already in place.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Given that a lot of these technologies are in place already, why are organizations in Africa not already adopting them? Can you hear me?
Well,
hello?
That depends on the organizations you're talking about. My experience is that kind of deep change is not driven by technology per se. It's kind of driven by people. Many of the makers of early project data, at least for new build, are technology enabled. It's all there, like you said, and kind of many of us are kind of.
Yeah, I think I think we've lost Lisa in there. When did you want to pick that up as to why you think those technologies, a lot of the ones I used in that example are off the shelf? And in the previous session, Nikki was talking about we've got to grab things, and we've got to be different, and we've got to reinvent. And so on. So, the example I gave you was just simply reinventing from or creating, using those technologies to sort of our advantage. But why are we got, there seems to be, having done many trips to the different regions in Africa, I don't see a lot of these technologies being adopted. Could you perhaps give some insights on that?
Definitely. I mean, I think we spoke earlier about, I know when we've chatted previously, about why it's not being adopted to its full potential at the moment in Africa. And I think from our side, we definitely see that it's something that we need to get our clients and our investors to understand the value of it. Why we need this data-rich environment that I think in our mind, it seems to be more about them understanding the full life of a building, as opposed to just looking at the initial build costs or capital costs of a project. And really what we see is in the corporate space or the corporate developers, they tend to separate their development team from their operational team. And what we need to do is maybe more look at an example of like a data center, for example, where what we're doing is in those cases, we actually have the design team as well as the operational team in the room we're designing. And we're designing to a PUE or a power efficiency ratio. And that sort of focuses the team better into looking at the whole life cycle of a project. I think what we're needing to do is getting our clients to understand that possibly the savings of PropTech sits in the whole life cycle of a project rather than just in the capital cost, so that we start to invest more in our teams upfront, creating this rich data model for us to use.
As I say, sort of, Sean, from your perspective, when do you start bringing PropTech into your sort of design process?
We would like to start it as soon as possible. I think design is always seen as this linear, sort of intuitive sort of process, and when you work in Africa, to your point as to why do we not implement these sort of structures up front? I think the problem that we have in Africa is that we sort of work in fast track projects where we sort of designing on the fly, if you can call it that, where we're designing the facade while the structure is being built, and there's no real time to really sit down and develop those sort of real design thinking elements around the elements that you would like to bring into the scheme. So, for example, your Airbus example, where you have time to develop all the processes and test every single element. And in Africa specifically, it's really difficult to implement that due to the systems that's in place through fast track construction. So we would like to implement a design thinking that's based on a more systemic sort of approach, where we start embedding data, coding and computational design right in the beginning, so that we can start tracking the data right from the beginning. So if I can use an example of a building facade that I mentioned before, is you'll be able to then design the facade specification, the glass sizes, all of those elements up front. You're still designing the facade aesthetically, but you know the elements that you're working from, and those data principles are then embedded into the scheme for the entire consultancy team to use. So it starts getting to that shared data stream, so that everyone upstream can actually start utilizing that information. You mentioned RFDI tracking systems that can be embedded right in the beginning, and that could be used by the FMs, the CMs, and all of those, and the building management systems afterwards. So for us, I think it's vitally important to start embedding the data as quickly as possible, but making sure that data is heavy enough to inform the design process, and that process is linked with all the other consultants upstream, so it becomes a shared system and not an isolated event in the beginning.
So I'm going to bring you back in, Lisa. Can you hear us properly now? So, if we, from your perspective, and the areas that you work in, has there been much adoption of PropTech?
I can.
So I think we've got a bit of a time lag on that. Yeah. Okay. All right.
So adoption of PropTech. Yes and no. It depends on what organizations you're talking about. Let me just talk then. My experience is that deep change is driven by
Okay, I think we've got a very bad time delay on this. So I just go back to you.
I have sound issues.
Okay, no problem at all. So just taking on those points that we were talking about earlier, so a lot of the focus very often when people think prop tech, they are thinking BIM. They are thinking about the use of a BIM, and normally it's seen to be my opinion. I might get into trouble with my panelists here. As an architectural friend, in terms of it's used for design and visualization, etc. and so forth. But Wendy, I know from a project management and cost management perspective that there are certainly gains to be made. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Sure, I can definitely do that. From our side, we've adopted using Costex, for example, which really allows us to pull those Rivet models or those 3D models and pull all the data that's actually in the model. So really what we're needing is from our design team to provide us a data-rich model. And quite easily, almost like a pivot sheet in an Excel sheet, you're able to pull the data. This allows us to put that straight into our cost estimates and price them quite quickly. But I think, it doesn't sort of just stop there for us. And it does mean that we can harvest the information a lot faster for build production. But it really for us is what we're able to do with that going forward as well. It's the fact that we can then take that information and apply it into like a whole life cycle model further down the track as well. There's a lot that can be linked to that data and to that model that can be used for the operational side of the project.
So, if I sort of take a real world example where, we've got a client that's asking for, they want to build something. They've got a very sort of fixed budget. I think there was discussion earlier on about, the profiling of how the spend on the client side, might need to probably shift a little bit if we want to bring prop tech into this.
Yeah.
Just sort of, Jean, from your perspective, is how do we get clients to really come on board and understand that it's worth ironing out the creases? If I take that Airbus example, again, that plane is fully virtually flown and tested in every single way before any money is spent on the on the production line. Surely our clients will want to be able to be in that position where they know what they're going to be in for in terms of what the target cost is, what the design is, how it's going to work, all that kind of good stuff.
Kim, it's a difficult question because I think we're trying to expose our clients to that sort of prop tech all the time and making sure that they understand that there's value in sorting out the details up front and making sure that they fully understand the benefit of this. And sometimes you get clients that really buy into it, and as soon as they buy into it, it's an easy sale process from there. It's convincing the clients that's not exposed to that sort of level of technology and to making sure that they fully understand the benefits of RFID tagging, for example, which is in as part of the life cycle of the building, and how we sell that and how we understand the process that's needed to unpack that is not just the architects or the engineers role, but I think it's the whole consultancy team to make sure that they understand that. So it's not an easy thing, and also exposing clients to that sort of level of technology when you've always been working with it in the background, and all of a sudden they think it needs to happen so quickly now because you've got all the data, so why haven't you done this before? And making them understand that actually there's a process involved in that, and I think it's going to take time, specifically in the rest of Africa. I think in South Africa some clients have managed to adopt this process quite successfully, and we're working very well with them. I think there's still some hurdles for us in the rest of Africa to cross though.
As just sort of the final question before we open up to the audience or statement, with a lot of global companies wanting to invest in Africa, is there not an expectation that we as service providers will give them something that's that embraces prop tech, that and gives them something at the end. So what, you know, there's a bit of an upskilling that needs to be done, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why we at Burgerman, we're really trying to be in the forefront of that in South Africa specifically, but also in the rest of Africa, as I mentioned. And I think you rightly said now is that if we don't skill ourselves up now and start educating our clients up front, we're going to be further and further behind with the rest of the world. And these sort of forums that we are participating in at the moment gives us that opportunity to bounce ideas and making sure that we can penetrate the markets all the better.
Now, I'll sort of give the example of a job that I know that was done in Western Sahara, you know, and one of those areas where nobody really wanted to go into, but the use of technology enabled the investors see what was going on. They could feel as if they were, you know, they knew what was going on. They never had to go in on site. And, you know, I personally, I'm just saying, I sort of think that there's an awful lot of opportunity there for us.
Yeah, and I think, Kim, as you said again, it's putting all of those data points together. At certain things like scanning is already available, drones, those sort of things. It's pulling all of those different elements in prop tech together in one platform, which is going to be important. And that development of that level of sophistication around apps, how we interrogate data streams and our clients, is going to be that next frontier for us. And we are working really hard to ensure that a client can sit anywhere in the world and be really connected to their construction building or site anywhere in the world through technology. And I think it's exciting time for us, definitely.
Yeah, and I just sort of think about all the amazing skills in Africa that you know, I'm working on a job in the Far East at the moment where I have team members who are based in Africa, and because of PropTech, they're able to contribute and bring their useful skills, and it's absolutely, you know, it's quite incredible. Yeah. So, you know, I'm just looking here, just, you know, I'd encourage anybody who wants to ask questions to put it into the stage, sorry, into the chat. I'm very happy to take them on. There's none at the moment, so I will carry on putting questions to all of you. So, you know, when I was looking at all of those, well, when I look at those sort of disruptors, you know, one of the key things is the use of drones. And you know, the ability to sort of survey sort of great distances, linking them into models. You know, I only have to take High Speed 2 at the moment, where we've got an amazing company that's flying fixed wing drones. They can do 40 kilometers a day, and they can scan everything, and it's all coming back. And from a project controls perspective, it gives us really good insight. You know, I assume drones must be something that people are starting to use.
Yeah, we started.
Am I the only one on here now? I assume.
No, we can hear you.
I hear you.
So Kim, now we've been using drones very successfully. We've managed to use the scanning technology to our advantage in quite a few different areas of design, not only from design aspect, so that we can start with site surveys and how we develop the design going forward from there. But it's also it's not just a visual thing. It is actually scanning the topography, scanning the existing buildings, making sure that we have that system in place so that the data that we've got to work with is accurate enough. And as you said now, is the scanning systems are so accurate at the moment that you can actually build drawings of technology from there. And similarly with the internal scanning, we've been engaging with quite a few companies now, and to ensure that internal scanning.
I'll take that question. I think you've raised the question, what have been some of the most useful PropTech tools you've used? An interesting tool that we've used so far on our side is the Matterport. We've actually managed to do a scan of one of the tallest buildings in Africa at this stage. And this allows you to do a Dall effect of the building. So you scan each floor, and it allows you to do a walkthrough of the overall building. This tool's also been really useful for us as a business during the period that we've been through now with COVID, and allowing us to use that and allowing our international clients to continue to engage with the build process on site.
Brilliant. So I'm just going to say that Keegan's asked a question here. What are some of the technologies used to boost on-site productivity during the construction phase? I'll give you a global overview, perspective of that. I'd say that there are 4 main technologies that have significantly boosted construction. Liquidity in the supply chain has been very sort of key to us, making sure that people are paid on time. Okay, so linking that into blockchain and using the RFID that Jean spoke about earlier. Being able to know exactly which component is sitting whether it's in production, whether it's in manufacturing, transportation, whether it's in storage, whether it's been installed or wherever on site. That's one way with materials. And secondly, using a mechanism for knowing where different laborers are, types of skill sets, being able to schedule that, being able to link that into your overall schedule and be able to sequence. So you get a lot of efficiency taking place on that. So that's sort of the use of like RFID, the use of the 360 camera, which Wendy spoke about earlier, has also been particularly key in that reducing the number of people on site has also helped with the efficiency of getting people and where they've gone around and so on. Thirdly, the use of the best way of describing that, making sure we've got the right people in the right location at the right time. So a bit more sort of around the manpower, laborers, sort of bit around that, bit around the vehicles and so on. And that's not always using RFID. It might be using something like GPS or something like that. And then thirdly, the use of augmented reality. Being able to overlay, whether it is, particularly during the commissioning phases and so on, but overlaying installation instructions, being able to also see, well, where are those components? They should be there, they're not there, etc., and so forth. And just really sort of, it makes a massive difference. So percentage-wise, only a 10% gain during the construction, say, but that is there's still lots to be done in that area. And addressing the second part of your question was about the skills. Absolutely, skills are absolutely going to be key to this. But what we have found out, what we've discovered, is that there's a lot of really good young people who are leaving university or from sort of tertiary education of some sort, and they are already skilled in this area. So whether it's Western Sahara, Mauritania, where we're also working, they're really good, amazing people that actually can adopt this technology a lot quicker than perhaps you and I would. Okay, from an African perspective, very quickly, John?
I think, Kim, just from our side, one thing that we haven't spoken about from an African perspective is the wastage. I think the tracking element of what you're doing from an early design point of view all the way through gives you an idea of how you can actually minimize the wastage on site as well, because you're designing properly up front. You're making sure that you're using your product effectively and efficiently, instead of designing on the fly and trying to hope and unpack the problem as it arises. So I think from a green and a sustainable point of view, that wastage element is quite important as well. And having that tracking elements involved into schemes, I think in the rest of Africa is going to make a huge impact on how we build buildings and getting that sustainable aspect back into more buildings in the rest of Africa as well.
Just a question, because I know labor in Africa is relatively cheaper than it is, say, in the US and Europe. Is that not going to play a key part in whether people want to adopt prop tech?
Yeah, I think it's just too easy to have the unskilled labor and have don't worry about the quality that's associated to that. And I think that is once again one of those very difficult things to unpack with your client, is to say that having better skilled people on site will actually assist in this process as well. But that also gives us the opportunity to upskill and making sure that the technology is used in various ways, and not only in the construction aspect, but how we train people and to utilize that technology on site as well. And I think it doesn't have to be just prop tech around drones and so forth, but it is utilizing the products that's designed off-site properly and making sure that it works and slots in together properly.
All right, and I think the last bit sort of I'm conscious that we've got a couple of minutes here. One of the biggest innovations that we've done is obviously the application of using blockchain to basically pay people based on work done, proof of work. And liquidity in the supply chain, especially now during these tight financial times, is absolutely key. While Africa certainly has been a big adopter of blockchain in the financial services sector, do you think it's ever going to come into the real estate space?
Yes, I think so. I think it's going to be even a harder sell in the construction industry. I think just to get everyone's heads around the computational design aspect, coding, and all of those elements that needs to be implemented from day one, to now implement a blockchain variant into that as well is going to be quite difficult. So, but I think if we can start setting up the system correctly from the word go, I think then we can start having the value adds of putting in the blockchains earlier as well, as a value add later on. So I think definitely, but I don't think it's going to happen that soon though.
Yeah, I think it all goes down to the contract and the contracting mechanism and getting our clients at the beginning to sort of buy into these sort of innovative ideas. Right. We have literally almost run out of time. So have you got any sort of final thoughts for our audience?
No, from our side, I think it's exciting times, as I mentioned. I think Boogaman Partners is really trying to put themselves out there as the thought leaders in Africa with regards to the technologies that we're using, and I think collaboration with yourselves and Turner & Townsend and other consultants is really going to help us put us in that forefront of technology, and I really hope that we can put this as a forefront going forward in the construction industry. Yeah, definitely.
All right. Okay, Wendy, you've joined the final 30 seconds. Final 30 seconds to wrap up.
I'm repeating on myself.
Okay, I'll leave it at there. So thank you both to Wendy and Jean. I know Lisanne was having some issues with technology, which is kind of ironic. But I just say it's incredibly exciting times, and I really truly believe that with a bit of innovation, a bit of thinking, and from my perspective, even taking the earlier panelists, Nikki talking about you need to reinvent yourself, grab what's there. It's really exciting times within the prop tech space. Okay, thank you very much.